All right, we are back here on the podcast, kicking off the new year here, starting out talking about what's been going on with the Yankees in the offseason. It's been not as crazy as the Mets. They've been doing a lot. Join me today, our Yankee guy on the podcast here, Dan Federico is here. Dan, happy New Year. How are you?
Hey, Mike, what's going on? Hope you had a happy holidays, happy New Year, and let's talk some Yankees.
Yeah, let's talk some Yankees here. I mean, going into the offseason, we know they had a lot to do. They have done a lot, but I would say it's like not as crazy as some of the other offseasons we've seen from them. Like, what do you think of what they've done to this point?
I mean, listen, step number one was bringing back Judge. It was an obvious. I mean, I was one of those guys who, when you saw the John Heyman arson Judge tweet, I was pretty much convinced that he was gone. I mean, that's the feeling I got. Didn't look good on the Yankees end. Obviously, they went to that ninth year, made things work out for the Yankees in terms of bringing him back, which was great because, I mean, that was much needed. And then, the Rodon signing was something that wasn't necessarily expected. I think not that it wasn't needed, but they did have a very strong pitching staff with what they had going into this season. So reinforcing that and bringing a clear-cut number two behind Garrett Cole was a really big move. But, I mean, that lineup's still looking pretty similar, maybe even a little less than last year, which was the big problem. So I think there's still a lot of questions that need to be answered.
Yeah, I was going to start the Aaron Judge contract here. The 9 years, $360 million deal he gets. He turned down more money from the Padres, supposedly, to stay in New York. The Giants made a big offer. He turned that down, too. This is one they had to get done here. Like, how do you think of how this contract played out for both sides?
I mean, listen, I may have said it on your show. I've definitely said it in the past that no matter what this contract that you're signing Aaron Judge for, 9 years, 10 years, whatever was going to end up, you're signing him for the rest of his career, and he's going to be that ambassador, and he's going to be that guy that you're bringing back on Old Timers Day and for all these events, and he's going to be throwing out first pitches in 20 years. Like that's the guy you're bringing in. You're going to be selling 99 jerseys just like you're selling 2 jerseys and 3 jerseys at Yankee Stadium currently. So it's a long-term investment that was needed. He's the heart and soul of the team, as obvious by being named captain now. So it was a move that was necessary. I mean, the money factor wasn't one for me. I didn't care how much he got as long as he was brought back, because that's obviously the right move and the needed move. And it worked out. I know the Padres were definitely very much invested. They never put out a formal offer that he could have signed, but they discussed numbers that night when he flew to San Diego. They were willing to go more than 10 years. I think up to 12 years they were willing to go. So he had his suitors. I mean, the Giants were obviously there too. They wanted him as well. But in the end, he wanted to be a Yankee, and that's where he is.
Yeah, that's for sure here. And I do think also the other big one for them, I think this is important for this area. They actually upgraded the team, was getting the Carlos Rodon contract done here, because now, like, you get him on a 6-year contract. He's team with Garrett Cole at the top of the rotation here. Like, what do you think about Rodon brings to the Yankees?
Yeah, so Rodon, again, that was something going into the offseason I don't think many fans expected, but pretty soon into going into the winter meetings and a little before when free agency was open, I mean, the dots were there to connect. I thought, pretty much during winter meetings, from what I heard and what I was told, that if the Yankees didn't sign Rodon, it wasn't for a lack of trying. Like, he was somebody who they really wanted, but they also knew what his market was and what teams were getting, so it was hard to predict what type of contract he'd get. But in the end, I think it was a really good contract. I understand that he hasn't been an ace-level pitcher for a long time, and he has injury concerns. I mean, there are definitely some caveats that come with this decision, but if you're talking about, 2023, 2024, 2025, you're going to get a guy who's an absolute bulldog on the mound. He loves pitching in the big games, loves being in that type of spotlight. He takes on that type of stuff, and I think that's something that New York fans are really going to gravitate towards. And clear-cut number two now, what that does to the rotation is, who knows if Nestor Cortez, as great as he was, going to be able to replicate what he did. Well, now he's going to be your 3 or 4 starter. Severino coming back from an injury and still trying to get back to where he was. Now he's going to be a 3 or 4 starter. Frankie Montas is somebody who sat at top or close to the top of the A's rotation for a long time. He's going to be your 5 starter. So the depth is crazy. It takes a lot of pressure off of a Cortez, a Severino, and Montas to, maybe work out some things that they need to work on. So it's a great move. I think it's going to bode really well, especially come playoff time. I mean, he has a lot of experience against a lot of teams the Yankees are playing in terms of, the Astros or the Rays. So it was a great move. And, yeah, the rotation is probably on paper one of the best it's ever been in the Yankees history.
Yeah, it certainly is here. And despite those two big moves, and bringing on Anthony Rizzo is obviously the third one here, like, I feel like they still have a lot of things they could still do. So, like, what would you like to see them do over the rest of the offseason?
Yeah, I mean, that left field spot is just screaming, we need some help. So I think that's always, that's what it is. I think a lot of people see that. The Benintendi contract, 5 years, I could see why they didn't want to go 5 years, but I thought that average annual value wasn't bad at all. I thought that was something the Yankees could have done. I would have been a proponent of them bringing him back. It's interesting where they go from here, but I think first and foremost, left field is got to be one that's answered.
Yeah, that's definitely for sure here. And the left field is surprised also they make a run like Michael Conforto, give him like the giant kind of in the 2 year, $36 million with the opt after one. Surprised that's not something that they pursued.
Yeah, I mean, I know there were some rumors they liked him early in the offseason. I think that type of contract where it was a 1-1, see what he can do this year, then he has a chance to opt out. I even think that was a little too rich for the Yankees' blood for what he got, which, I mean, it's funny to say with all the money they make, but I think the type of player he is where he's coming back from a big injury, you don't know what he's going to really be able to bring to the table. To rely on him to play left field all the time was a little risky for them, but at the same time, I thought he was a good fit. I would have made a run at him. Yeah, the options are pretty bare now. I mean, you have David Peralta, who the Yankees have liked in the past. He's still out there on the free agent market. He could be a stopgap type guy. I mean, the Max Kepler rumors are everywhere. Again, he's another player the Yankees have had interest in, so that could be a guy. That's where you kind of go back to Oswaldo Cabrera. He could be that guy who could play out there, and we saw he could do what he brings to the team in terms of versatility, energy. He always has good at-bats. Like, that's something that goes undervalued where, okay, maybe he strikes out, but if he's seeing 6 pitches, that bodes well, and he could relay that information to the next hitter, or he can make the pitcher just do a little extra work that he wasn't expecting. So he was a very interesting, very energetic player in that stretch run last year. He's obviously got the inside track now, and it seems like that's the way they're going to go.
Yeah, it does feel interesting, though, considering there were rumors for a little bit that they're going to try and make a trade for a guy like Brian Reynolds, maybe shift Bader out to left. You think those rumors are pretty much dead?
I don't know about dead. I know, again, that's a player who the Yankees are very interested in. That's very well documented. They just want a lot of players in return. They want high-quality players in return, and out of recent reports, they want starting pitching, which the Yankees don't have to offer. And we're talking MLB ready. I was told, they're not looking for the top of that trade package to be, an A-ball player. They want AAA, ready to go, players they can insert into the team now and bring the next crop of Pirates up. So if they're necessarily looking for pitching, it doesn't bode well for the Yankees. But again, they have some high-quality talents. I mean, you still have Jason Dominguez, who you would expect, I think, anyway, to go in a trade like that. Oswald Peraza, somebody who I would think. Austin Wells is another guy. Like these, between Peraza and Wells, those two guys are guys that could fill that. Okay, they could probably, if you're in the Pirate system, 2023 is the time where they could be on the big league roster. So I think that could be, those players would be where it kind of starts. Anthony Volpe is somebody who I think is untouchable at this point. I don't think there's any way he gets traded in the deal. They just love everything about this guy. And there's a chance that he's going to get a shot in spring. I don't know how serious they'll be in playing him. I don't know what he'll have to do to make the team out of spring training, but I know he's definitely going to get a chance. So he's off the table, but what the Pirates want and what the Yankees have, I don't think there's the best pairing there, but you never know what other teams offer and where the Yankees stand in that. So I think it's still a possibility, but it's not as high as it once was.
Yeah, that's for sure here. Would you be bothering and go get anybody in free agency, whether it's Peralta we mentioned, maybe Jurickson Profar or somebody like that, and just said, we're going to run with Cabrera and Hicks to start the year? Would that be an issue?
I like I mentioned, Peralta, somebody who the Yankees have had interest in. Jurickson Profar, somebody the Yankees have had interest in for years, and he's another one of those guys that I like where you can kind of plug and play him while he has his faults. I mean, there's that defensive versatility that I think is so big on all teams, at this stage of the game. So those are two players I think are options. I want to say, as of right now, I think it's going to be Oswaldo Cabrera and Aaron Hicks, which I know a lot of people aren't going to like, but Aaron Hicks still has 3 years left. I know that they did try to trade him, but you've also heard on Yes where Jack Curry has said that Aaron Hicks' contract could be almost seen as a bargain in some regards as what contracts are being given out these days. So, and when he says, that's what the Yankees are saying. So, I wouldn't be surprised if he's somebody who sees a little bit of playing time and Cabrera gets a bulk of it. Because there's nothing really out there that's enticing. I mean, listen, you could bring in a Peralta or a Profar. It's great, but it's not going to be a needle mover. It's not going to be anything that's much different to me than a Cabrera and a Hicks, kind of splitting that time or 60-40, whatever that may be. So I wouldn't be surprised if they kind of just keep what they have.
What about the bullpen here? I know the one move they made here is they brought Tommy Kahnle back on the 2-year deal, but obviously right now they just have to have a competition at closer. Assume Clay Holmes is the favorite for that. They probably use a couple arms out there. What do you think they could do for the bullpen?
Yeah, I mean, I really like how it's constructed. I know with the Liffey DFA, there's people mentioning how there's a lack of lefties, but when you have Marinaccio and now bringing back Tommy Kahnle, those two guys are great against lefties. And then you still have Wandy, obviously, who did a great job last year as well. So they have a lot of depth. Maybe not necessarily the biggest names that you're used to, but a lot of proven players. I mean, Clay Holmes, Loaizaga, Peralta. He's still got Lou Trevino on the roster. I mean, he's somebody who drew the ire of fans, but he had a pretty good year with the Yankees if you look at his numbers. So there's depth there. There's a lot of people that are going to move around. I'm not sure if you're going to see Michael King next year, but he's another guy who you hope eventually comes back to form because he was an absolute force in 2022 before he got injured. So, yeah, there's depth. I think, like you said, there's some things to move around. I think they're going to try a couple people out as closer. I wouldn't be surprised if Loaizaga gets a chance there. But overall, I like the unit they have set up right now.
Yeah, that's also a spot you look at. You could say, I'm looking right now, some of the guys are still on the market in terms of potential free agents. I mean, they could bring Zach Britton back, Will Smith's out there, Will Harris, Chafin, Brad Hand. There's a lot of guys you can see them maybe in a month saying, okay, who's still here? We'll grab you on a 1-year deal, add a veteran to this group. I can see them doing that as well. Yeah,
100%. I could definitely see that. I mean, that reliever market, there's always going to be names getting close to spring training that are going to end up getting jobs. So, there's a lot of time to see how things shake out, and I definitely wouldn't be surprised if they bring in a veteran reinforcement or two just to kind of round out that bullpen.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about some of these prospects here, and right now they have not done much on the position player side apart from bringing back the 2 free agents they had here. It does make me feel like that they have big plans for Anthony Volpe and Oswaldo Peraza on the 2023 roster here. You think this is sort of looking at we're not going to do too much because we have eyes on these 2 guys being part of the lineup at least by midseason?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty clear now the second year in a row where they kind of bowed out of the shortstop market, and there's some big names on there this year again. I think that it's all eyes are on Volpe specifically, but also Peraza. I mean, they're both going to be players. You know how they bounced around Peraza a little bit. He played some second base when he got called up last year. I know there are some people who question Volpe's future at shortstop. I mean, I haven't necessarily heard that, but he could be another guy who kind of bounces around. But yeah, it seems like all their eggs in their baskets. And Peraza is somebody who I expect to have I guess they have a better shot making it just because he has that little bit of experience. He's a little more ahead in his development. I wouldn't be surprised to see Volpe spend a little more time in AAA just to kind of, work out some kinks and get ready for the call up. But I mean, this year is going to be that next chapter of the baby bomber era, and it's going to be full swing with Volpe and Peraza. I don't know when, let's say, Volpe gets a call. And like I said before, they're going to give him a chance. He's going to get some looks at spring training. To me, it seems like the IKF situation may be a last resort. Like if Peraza and Volpe really stink up the joint, which I wouldn't expect. I think they'll go back to him to start at shortstop, but it seems like, to me, Peraza is going to be the guy who's going to get the job out of spring training. Now, that brings me back to last year where I just don't understand why, when he got called up, why he didn't get the full-time job, just to give him a chance and see what he had and let him work everything out at the big league level then. So going into this year, he'd have a little more of a comfort level. But it seems like one of those 2 guys is going to be there, and by mid-year, I wouldn't be surprised if both of those guys are starting in the infield.
Yeah, the other guy in the microscope coming in here is obviously Josh Donaldson, because obviously I'm assuming they tried to move him, got no interest in taking on his contract here. I think it's also a spot where he starts the season. They hope he's hot, and like, if he's not performing by June, there's like a DFA on the table.
Yeah, I would think that I mean, you hear what the front office, and again, Jack Curry, I always love listening to Hot Shows, and one of those things where when Jack Curry speaks, my ears perk up just because you know what he's saying, he's relaying that information. So he said time and time again, they think he makes his money's worth in his glove alone. So they highly value his defense out there base, which is great. Don't get me wrong. But, I mean, he was a black hole at the plate last year, and the Yankees don't have room for that going into this year. I mean, they're, like we've said earlier, they're running back pretty much the same team, and he was a big problem as to why they didn't meet the success they wanted, right? So him coming back, they're going to give him a chance. Like you said, they did try to move him, but it was proved to be impossible. So they're going to give him a shot. And again, his defense is great. Don't get me wrong, but the little he provides on offense just kills the team. So, but I fully expect that spring training, Josh Allen to be third base, and like you said, probably by mid-year to see what he brings this year.
Yeah, that's for sure here. And obviously, my last question here is like looking at this team right now. I mean, based on the roster here, I mean, pretty much it's like you said, it's pretty much the same team brought back with Rodon in, like, and Tyone out, and Benintendi out here. Like, do you think this team is much better than it was the end of last year? Because I know they can point to, like, we had the record hot pace at the start of the season, but the critics would say, look, back as season you weren't very good, and the Astros smoked you guys. So, like, do you think the addition of Rodon is enough to markedly improve this team?
It's so interesting because you have to value pitching as highly as possible, and I love the Rodon move, and I think that that's going to really boost this team. But when you see the offense, they're running back the same team, and they're even relying on a guy like DJ LeMahieu, who's we don't know what is 2023 is going to be like. I mean, they still haven't decided if he's going to have surgery yet. So there's so many question marks, and this is not even to just random players like DJ LeMahieu's obviously since he signed with the Yankees has been one of the most important players on the roster, and that's a question mark. And obviously bring Rizzo back is great, and eliminating the shift that's going to boost his average a little bit. But he's also getting up there in age and he has back problems. I mean, that's another one. Stanton, love him when he's hot, but he's always that Jekyll and Hyde type player. They're relying heavily on Harrison Bader, who has had moderate success, but is another up and down guy in center field. And Jose Trevino, is he going to be able to replicate what he did last year? That's going to be tough. I mean, there's so many question marks on this team. And, I don't know really. I don't see how you could admit that this team has improved. Again, and that's even with the addition of Rodon. And I don't say that lightly. It's hard to say, but I can't in good conscience say this team is full-fledged and improved when there's just so many holes offensively.
I feel like there's sort of a spot where the Braves were last year. You need like prospects to come up here and sort of like take jobs and like lift you a bit, like what they have with Michael Harris and Spencer Strider and Vaughn Grissom to a lesser degree. I feel like if that happens, they take a leap forward. But I don't know, like based on what they've done, like I agree with you. Apart from Rodon, that they've really gotten much better from where they were, which is a problem in the division where the Orioles and Toronto and Tampa could all be problems.
Yeah, I mean they're relying on a lot of question marks, and that's tough. And obviously baseball's a long season, and the trade deadline, and you can always improve, but getting off to that hot start is important, and that was the case last year. That hot start, I mean, it was a hot couple months, not just a start, but that carried them into the playoffs, how they fell off. So getting off to a good jump is first and foremost, and with all the question marks and relying on prospects and trying to figure things out, it's going to be tough, but they believe in these guys. They're going to get a chance, and I know a lot of fans have really wanted to see, the Perazzas and the Volpes get their shot. So 2023 is going to be the year.
Yeah, I think it will be, Dan. Thanks all the time. Really appreciate it. People want to follow you on Twitter with some of your Yankee takes. How can they do that?
Of course, man. You guys follow me on Dan Federico. I'm always tweeting on there, so just follow along over there.
All right, Dan. Thanks all the time. Really appreciate it.
All right, Mike. No problem. Thanks again for having me.